The small mountain village Chimney Rock sits right on the Broad River in western North Carolina. Its main street is usually buzzing with tourists visiting Chimney Rock State Park, or locals enjoying their favorite restaurant, all while the steady rush of the river rolls by. But recently, Chimney Rock has looked much different. Hurricane Helene brought massive amounts of rain to western North Carolina last fall. The storm overwhelmed the river that runs through Chimney Rock.
Chimney Rock says much of the area is wiped out tonight by massive flooding from Helene. They're also
devastation we're dealing with here. Chimney Rock's gone.
But the storm's flood was so severe, it turned this thriving tourist spot into a desolate landscape.
Now, tourists have been replaced with trucks, tractors, and excavators. The village is ground zero in western North Carolina for a massive project in the wake of Hurricane Helene. Countless buildings and homes need to be rebuilt, as well as lots of roads. Helene wiped out hundreds of roadways. Now, engineers are working to fill in the holes it left behind. And in places like Chimney Rock,
the whole thing's a big hole.
But how do you rebuild a road that's meant to last in a climate that's changing quicker than we can keep up?
The critical question right now is what information are we using to plan for these disasters?
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home at the crossroads of the South. This week, producer Charlie Shelton Ormond goes to where the weather meets the road.
Hey, I'm Anita Rao. If you like the thoughtful conversations you hear on The Broadside, you may also like the show I host called Embodied. Each episode is a deep dive into a topic related to sex, relationships, and health. We take on everything from how a schizophrenia diagnosis can impact intimacy, to what it's like to be in a relationship with an AI chatbot, or be a stand-up comedian with a stutter. We meet some incredible people who are down to explore big questions about our bodies and society, and talk about things that are sometimes a little taboo. You can get new episodes of our show each week. Find Embodied from WUNC wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, so I'm standing where the original road was and looking down at the river. Nathan, can you hear me? Yeah.
I'm standing on top of a ridge trying to talk to Nathan Moneyham.
Where are you at right now?
He works for North Carolina's Department of Transportation, DOT, as a division construction engineer.
About how far down are you?
You probably can't hear him, but it's 80 feet.
80 feet? I can't really hear you, but that's kind of the point. Yeah.
Nathan's standing on a stretch of gravel that's winding along the river. It's part of the network of temporary roads DOT has built since Helene hit last fall. The storm wiped out Chimney Rock's narrow mountain highway, leaving a sea of rubble in its wake. Finding pavement now among the splintered streets is rare, but Nathan's showed me a small patch where the original road used to be, and carved into it is a big drop-off, diving right into the riverbed.
And in the height of the storm, the water elevation had eroded into the slope all the way up to the existing road.
Wow, so the water had risen those 80 feet from the river up to slice off this side of the road.
At its height, at least, was washing away that existing slope. You see here.
This slope is one of many along the highway that runs parallel to the river. Steep drop-offs like this punctuate the valley.
For about 2.5 miles, the road was completely destroyed.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your time with DOT, in your time as an engineer? Have you ever seen any damage like this before?
No, and this is definitely something this is beyond any level of storm that Western North Carolina has seen, and really above and beyond anything that's ever been seen in the state of North Carolina.
Now, DOT's big undertaking is set to begin. Build back the miles of road that were washed away in Western North Carolina.
And pretty significant permanent repairs. A lot of new walls, a lot of roadway fill that obviously has been washed away. That'll need to be replaced.
It'll take a long time, years, to give everything the permanent fix it needs. Like that 80-foot hole
more than likely look at a significantly sized retaining wall.
Okay, so right here, something like a retaining wall for this 80-foot drop-off would be appropriate.
Yes, that's our expectation.
But with a climate that's getting more intense, the next big storm is only a matter of time. So how do you build it all back so it doesn't get washed away again? Like that retaining wall, can DOT put in a wall for an 80-foot slope that'll hold for 80 plus years?
As much as we can to incorporate resiliency and our current standards into these designs.
And in the meantime, as they gear up for this big rebuild, DOT has all those temporary roads they just finished. If all that's going to be there for years, those roads are going to see some storms of their own.
We'll be looking to pave this in the coming months so that they can function for the next several years.
So what this area needs is a new road that is going to be stronger. So if I wanted to learn more about how to design a road like this.
Yeah, hydraulics is a major player in these areas of damage with the storm that are along the river, and Chimney Rock's a good example of that.
All right, hydraulics. They're the engineers who make sure roads can handle water, whether that's rivers, rainfall, flooding.
Charlie? Yes. It's Matt. Hey, Matt. Nice to meet you.
So I knocked on their door and met up with DOT's main hydraulics guy, Matt Laufer.
Just oversee all the water management requirements for the department, basically.
And as far as water management goes, Matt says Helene in much of Western Carolina was unreal.
I mean, from a rainfall perspective, it's off the charts.
Yeah.
And it was greater than a 1,000-year event.
A 1,000-year event. Let's break that down. That means the chance of rainfall from a storm like Helene happening in any given year is 1 in 1,000. It's not that this much rain happens once every 1,000 years. It's a percentage, 1 in 1,000, a 0.1% chance. So very rare. Matt says trying to safeguard against a storm like that is nearly impossible.
The magnitude of this event is something, you can't really design for, but you can definitely look at ways to build stronger, better.
In order to do that, let's check out some of what's in Matt's tool belt, some of the things he uses when drawing up plans for a road. To get a good sense of how much water a highway, a bridge, or drain pipe is going to see, Matt relies on two big resources. One of them comes from the U.S. Geological Survey. It's where Matt can find data on stream flow.
You want to know what the flow in the river is, right, and the streams that you're crossing.
So when Matt's drawing up plans for something like a bridge, this data helps him get a feel for the volume of water that's likely to flow underneath that bridge.
Then you have, for rainfall, there's Atlas 14.
Atlas 14. This is a data set from NOAA on rainfall records. It's where Matt can look at a specific place, like Chimney Rock, and see how much rain amounts to a 1,000-year event. Or a 500-year event, a 100-year. The data goes all the way down to a 1-year event.
And they go through a complicated analysis of all the rainfall gauges for different regions of the country.
For example, if a rainstorm lasts for 3 days, like Helene, a 1,000-year event in Chimney Rock would be nearly 12 inches of water. But like Matt said, Helene brought rain to the region that was off the charts.
We've got reported rainfall amounts as much as 11 inches per hour. That's just a significant amount of rain, right? It's unprecedented.
I want to get a look at some of those rainfall totals for you. Busick, North Carolina saw over 30 inches of rain from Wednesday to Friday. That's over in Yancey County.
Look at this. To the east of Asheville, North Carolina, an estimated 14.1 inches of rain. Let's look further down.
The intensity of Helene was rare, but the rainfall it dumped is just a warning for what's to come. Matt put it like this.
Like today's 500-year will be 2100's 100-year.
Today's 500-year storm is set to be a 100-year event by the end of this century.
Well, how do we build this back so that it can withstand those forces in the future?
It can be hard sometimes to think about what life will really be like in 2100. A lot of us probably won't be around by then. But if DOT is putting in the work and money to build a new highway, they certainly want it to still be here at the end of the century. So it's crucial for them to know.
okay, what should we plan for in the future? And that's where rainfall records come in.
That's Lauren Sommer. She's a climate correspondent for NPR.
You know, you don't want to build for the climate of the past.
But here's the problem. Atlas 14, the rainfall data that's a key part to the building process, is solely based on the past. It's historical data.
That doesn't capture how much more extreme storms are already today, and it definitely doesn't capture how much more extreme storms are going to get in the future.
When we look backwards, we can't really, that's not a good indicator of what's going to happen in the future now, right?
If an engineer is using old, outdated tools, that road is going to quickly turn into a dead end. And then what? That's coming up after a quick break.
There's a lot going on right now. Mounting economic inequality, threats to democracy, environmental disaster, the sour stench of chaos in the air. I'm Brooke Gladstone, host of WNYC's On the Media. Want to understand the reasons and the meanings of the narratives that led us here, and maybe how to head them off at the pass? That's On the Media's specialty. Take a listen wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're rebuilding a road that was wiped out from massive flooding, and we want to make it strong enough to withstand more storms in the future. So what do we have? We have the tried and true research at our disposal.
Right now, we have our traditional methods that we're still using.
With lots of climate data from the past. But how helpful is data that's decades old when we're looking at the road ahead? Literally. Well, the good news is
there's a lot of research and thought going into how we're going to design for future.
There's been a big push to get those rainfall records updated.
Climate reporter Lauren Sommer again.
And NOAA is now in the process of updating rainfall records for the entire country. Before it was kind of piecemeal, where it would be one region would get some, the states would have to help pay for it. It was a very tricky process. So now it's going to be done nationwide, and it's going to be done in a way that takes climate change into account.
This new data set, the one replacing Atlas 14, will be called, any guesses? Atlas 15.
When Atlas 15 comes out, you're going to see a shift, I think, in how we look at some of our design criteria for future conditions. And what I mean by that is if it's like an interstate highway that's going to be in place for 100 years, you're going to be looking at what is the rainfall going to be in 2100.
Atlas 15 is going to be a game changer for engineers like Matt when it comes out. NOAA is set to release most of Atlas 15 next year, in 2026. But meanwhile, places like Chimney Rock need to be rebuilt now. The people who call it home had their lives upended, and they're ready to see their town repaired as soon as possible. Because of that, North Carolina's Department of Transportation sees a lot of potential in Atlas 15, but its engineers aren't exactly waiting around for it.
I just got this call from Matt Laufer, and almost like a cold call to some degree, where it was like, we're concerned.
Enter Jared Bowden. He's the Associate Director for the North Carolina State Climate Office.
I've been running climate models for decades now, almost over 20 years.
A few years ago, Jared and Matt got to chatting and quickly realized it was high time for a climate scientist and an engineer to join forces.
And the partnership with climate scientists is really important for us engineers, civil engineers, as we go forward. Historically, we haven't had to have that because everything's been based on, okay, well, we're assuming a constant climate. It's not the case anymore, right?
So Jared and his team got to work, sifting through a bunch of historical data on North Carolina's climate, and turned the past into a prediction.
What we did in our project, we took it a step further. We were able to look at the frequency of rainfall events and how the intensity may change.
The result? One word: raindrop.
We created this tool called Raindrop, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of letters for an acronym.
Yeah.
That was just a cool word.
Yeah, no, it's an acronym.
That'd be impressive if you could remember all those.
Yeah.
Raindrop is kind of like a North Carolina specific version of Atlas 15. It's an interactive map that predicts rainfall levels in the future. Jared actually gave me a little tutorial of it in action.
Yeah, so you can start making these comparisons, right?
Yeah. We're looking at two maps. One up top, the data set is Atlas 14, so that's looking at observational historical data that's rooted in the past. And then the map on the bottom, the second map, is the one that uses the predictive modeling that y'all have put together.
Yeah. So you can come here and let's say the large differences are at end century.
It's a lot of red and orange. Raindrop also lets you tweak the map according to different levels of greenhouse gas emissions.
These different options mean high emissions, like high greenhouse gases, or kind of like a middle of the road greenhouse gases.
And the map confirms that if higher levels of greenhouse gas emissions continue, the really intense storms will become more common down the road.
On top is today's 100-year storm. The bottom is a future 50-year storm. You'll see that these look very similar.
Like Jared said, he's been running these kind of climate models for decades. But it's one thing to put all this data into a tool like Raindrop. It's a whole other thing to get that tool into the right hands.
North Carolina Department of Transportation is on the cutting edge of this. DOT invested in, for instance, doing climate model simulations themselves. I don't think that a lot of other state DOTs are thinking of doing those type of things as actively as DOT here, North Carolina DOT.
This dynamic duo between DOT and climate scientists means taking the public data that's available, things like Atlas 14, and making it even more southern. For example, much like the engineers rebuilding the roads, Jared's crew spotted a big hole in the data and decided to fill it.
A fundamental problem is precipitation from hurricanes. We recognized early on that this was a weakness in some of the data sets we have. And so we then created a data set that was looking at future hurricanes. We not only have tools in the data that DOT can use to think about resilience, but they have different flavors of the data.
So what do these tools and data mean for a place like Chimney Rock? Well, if Matt's drawing up plans for that retaining wall, he wants to make sure it's built to last for a long time.
What can we expect maybe in 2100 or 2050 from a precipitation standpoint? How do we do a better job for future conditions?
North Carolina DOT is looking decades down the road. But data isn't the only thing you need to rebuild. There's one final piece.
It also costs a lot of money.
Yeah, about $5 billion. That's how much DOT estimates it'll cost to repair all the damaged infrastructure. They have some relief money to start the job, but getting all $5 billion that's needed will take time. So how does DOT decide how to best use those funds? Well, not every road is built the same. Matt says each road design is case by case according to where it is and what it needs.
Is it a primary road? Is it a US route? Is it an NC route? Or is it just a secondary route, right? Those also drive the decision-making process.
For example, an interstate highway isn't getting the same treatment as something like a back road, a secondary road, as Matt says.
I mean, you're not building a secondary road to a 100-year design storm, right? Economically, it doesn't make sense.
So what's the recipe for rebuilding? Well, each road has its own unique concoction fused into its concrete. Engineers develop a specific equation that looks at the data available and balances resiliency with cost. And now they have some new tools in the shed, ready to be used. But the real work, the designing and actual rebuilding, is only just getting started.
And we don't have all the answers yet. There's just a lot that needs to be done, so it's going to take some time.
And in that time, as the rebuild unfolds, here's to hoping another Helene, another 1,000-year storm, doesn't come through again anytime soon.
This episode of The Broadside was produced by Charlie Shelton Ormond. It was edited by Jared Walker. Wilson Sayre is our executive producer. Special thanks to Kenny Malone for his help on this episode. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. You can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.